have an adapter? Like, yeah. By any chance? My adapter's a little bit finicky right now. Okay. All right, we're gonna work with this. Whoop. All right. Now let's try to move this. Okay. Are you gonna be stable now? It's obfuscation. Okay. Okay. I think it might be better now. Oh, but there's another. Oh, it's still blinking. Yeah. So I need. Thank you. Thank you to the generous person who lent me this adapter. Oh, thank you. Hope it works. Fingers crossed. Okay. So that's a little bit better. I don't know why it's showing that though here. So, oh no! Don't look.
Launch the slideshow.
Launch the slideshow? Okay. Great. Do it for me now? Nope. Yeah, still no. Let's move this up here. Wow. I know how to computer. Let's see. Put it full screen. This one. Like that. Good enough? Good enough? Gives me power. Yes, yes. All right. Hello. Oh, yes, please. Yeah. If I fumble and drop my mic, just assume that I did a mic drop. All right, sorry about the technical issues over there. Hi everyone. So today I'll be talking to you about Radamanthys, which is the stealer that's making waves in the e-crime landscape. So my name is Bea, and I'm an e-crime security researcher at CrowdStrike. So, Radamanthys had only just hit the e-crime market when I first started tracking it back in November of 2022. When I first analyzing it, it felt a lot like peeling an onion layer after layer. So not just from the staggering list of information stealer features that it had, but from all the layers to understand any single one component of it. So Radamanthys is marketed by the developer as an info stealer, but it seems to position itself as kind of this Swiss Army knife of stealers. So besides information stealing capabilities, it can also do keylogging, file grabbing, and even loading secondary payloads. So it's a loader as well. So the stealer uses a modular architecture, and it's typically used by malware with more mature development practices. And it also seems that the author has a very exceptional understanding of various file formats, which they use quite extensively in Radamanthys. And some of you might have seen some of the excellent research that Hasher Zaid has made on how Radamanthys uses the hidden B format, and the research that Zscaler has published on their usage of Quake 3 Arena's virtual machine for obfuscating the initial loader stage. So overall, this stealer appears to be designed to maximize friction to defenders. So truly, analyzing it has brought me spiritually closer to Hydapain Herald. So please send help. So on the other hand, though, the experience is completely flipped from the threat actor's point of view. So a lot of the early feedback from Radamanthys is actually how helpful the developer is and how they provide a lot of documentation and guides, like they even have a wiki. And if you look at the words that they use to describe their own panel on their website, which is over there on the right, they describe the panel design as being intuitive and worry-free and efficient. So true enough, the developer appears to pay really close attention to reducing friction from the attacker's perspective. So let's take a look now at what we'll be talking about today. We're going to start off with a high-level tour of Radamanthys' technical architecture. Then we'll take more of a deep dive into a part of Radamanthys that I find particularly interesting, which is the way that it utilizes wave steganography. Following this, we're going to go over the business case for Radamanthys, particularly how it positions itself in the commodity stealer market compared to its competitors. Then we're going to take a look at distribution, and then we'll wrap up with some key takeaways and a little bit of Q&A if there's still some time in the end. So let's start off with a functional overview of Radamanthys. So in this case, we're going to be abstracting away some of the intermediate stages and just considering like purely the architecture and the functional components. So Radamanthys starts with an initial loader, which the developers call the stub. So previously this was a PE32 executable, but now it comes in a few more flavors like PE64, .NET, and shellcode. And basically this is meant to maximize compatibility with how the threat actor wishes to deliver the stub component of Radamanthys. So the stub contains the encrypted configs, which consists of the magic, which is RHY, the flags, the ID, which roughly identifies the Radamanthys operator. I'm going to go over this more later. And the C2 service URL. So the stub loads the loader component several stages later. And the loader is essentially responsible for anti-analysis and facilitating the execution of the stealer. And it's also responsible for decrypting the config as well. So one of the things that's really annoying about Radamanthys is the fact that the key is embedded in the loader. So you would need to go several stages later to even decrypt the config. And then I've listed here some of the different ways that they've used. The more recent one they have is a custom base64 alphabet, which the alphabet is also in the loader, and Cha-Cha-20 and XOR. But the other ones are there as well. So the loader contacts the C2 server, and if the initial handshake is successful, then it will respond back with an image or an audio file. And then that file contains shellcode that will eventually execute the main stealer. And then the stealer would also reach out to the same C2 server. I should also note, by the way, that a lot of the loader and the stealer's functionalities are encapsulated within modules. So the specific functionality of the modules is kind of outside the scope of the talk. It's covered a lot more in Hasher's article, so you should read that. But in summary, these are the loader modules which perform evasion, stealer execution, network communication, etc. And the modules may be any type of data. So it could be 32-bit, 64-bit shellcode, entire executables, text files, scripts, just to name a few examples. The stealer component, not to be confused with the entirety of the stealer, also has its own modules, which serve additional info stealing capabilities. You see that actually has quite a bit of like Lua scripts that do more stealing. So overall, there's a lot of systems running Radamanthys, and any one of them could be a talk, but we're going to focus more on how the loader obtains the first stage stealer shellcode from the C2 server, just because it's kind of an interesting case study to demonstrate its complexity. So right around May 2023, Radamanthys loaders started receiving what appeared to be wave audio files from C2 servers. So this is what the clip sounded like. Let's see if this works. Any luck? Oh no. Okay, let's see if this plays. A little help. Is it?
Est-ce qu'en régie, vous pouvez vous assurer de mettre le son qui vient de la prise jack? Play it again?
Yes. It's.
No.
No? But you can see it though.
Try unplugging and use your mic. Yeah.
Okay, let's do this. Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
We tested it the other day.
We did. Excellent. All right.
So there's music and
There's
then noise.
music and then no music. So this is it visualized in its full glory. So you can probably guess that the noisy part is probably the stealer payload. And yes, but that is only partially true. So the audio part is also the payload, but in encoded form. But how exactly is it encoded? So let's have a look at the audio file data. So the RIF format, which is the format for WAV. It's not really the topic of the talk, but in theory, one thing that I want to emphasize is that the stealer parses the WAV header to determine how to decode the data. So this is pretty generic then. So you can change the audio file and it would still work. The payload itself is encoded within the data section. So Radamanthys parses out the number of channels that's contained in the audio file. So the clip we just listened to actually turns out to be stereo. So it has two channels, a left channel and a right channel. So Radamanthys would collect a group of 8 audio samples, and then it would then drop the right channel, keeping only the left. And then here, we see a binary representation of the hex bytes of the left channel. And then essentially we do LSB steganography, but only on the left channel. We start off with these 8 bytes here, and then we end up with decoding hex 63. So this is a summary of what we just saw. Given 8 audio samples, we take the left channel only, grab the least significant bit, and then we end up with a single byte. So the result here is still actually encrypted. So how exactly does the encryption work? So to understand that, we're going to have to zoom into a particular module that the loader uses, which is the netclient.bin module. So the loader would eventually decompress and execute the netclient.bin. And if everything goes well, then netclient generates public and private ECC key pair and makes a handshake with the C2 server, sharing its own public key, so kind of standard PKI infrastructure. So the structure of the data that is sent to the C2 server kind of looks like this. So it's a 64-byte ECC client public key, single null byte, and 5 bytes consisting of the keyboard layout and the country code, which is serving as the CIS check. So after all of this data then gets base64 encoded and then added as the if match header of the HTTP request. So this is the full request where you see the if match field. So let's see how the server actually generates the WAV file, assuming that the handshake goes well. So first, the C2 server generates its own public and private key pair, derives the shared secret with the client's public key, which is just received. The server generates a key salt, which it SHA-1 hashes together along with the shared secret. And then the first 16 bytes of this is used as a RC4 key for encrypting the stealer's first stage. And then it gets encoded into the WAV file. So that's the WAV file visualized. So there's only actually 11 seconds in this case of audio. So whatever is available, it gets encoded, and then the remainder of the stealer ciphertext just gets appended at the end over there. And then in order to actually be able to decrypt this on the client side, then we would also need to have the server public key and the key salt. Both of these get encoded to a custom header structure for this, and gets encoded as well into the beginning of the audio file. And then now the module should be able to decrypt this, so this gets sent back. So what's next? So the payload that is encoded in the WAV file, it's actually still another stage in the infection chain, so it's just another layer. So the contents is actually shellcode with a bunch of encrypted and compressed code at the very end. In the interest of time, if you are interested about this, please talk to me near the end, because I think it's pretty interesting, and I think it would be very helpful in kind of uncovering more of this. So at this point, having looked broadly at the infection chain of Radamanthys, we're going to kind of look at some of the takeaways that we have. So first, if we don't have the session key, then we won't be able to decrypt the stealer. So even if we were to carve out the WAV file, then we would still not have the client's private key, which is necessary for decrypting the shellcode. Also, there is the fact that the keys are kind of all over the place. So the config key is in the core loader stage, so you'd have that problem of having to extract later stages in order to actually like extract configs. And then there's some like unusual design choices that they use here, because audio steganography is not very typical, and and as well as, I didn't mention this during the talk, but like they also used JPEG steganography previously, as well as like Quake3VM and just all of these file formats. Like they don't really need to use this, but it does catch people's attention though, and like maybe the developer is creative and maybe they like to flex, or maybe this could be a marketing strategy, like don't really know. So this is a screenshot of the public media from their website. So they actually take some of the articles that researchers have released about the stealer and use it kind of like a testimonial of sorts. So it's important to realize that like catching our attention and having articles written about our work is marketing for threat actors, but also intel for the developers as well. So this actually comes from the Radamanthys website, which very closely resembles the kind of thing you'd expect from a software product. So in general, the developer put a lot of effort in differentiating Radamanthys by giving it a more kind of professional appearance. And as well, they have a wiki, which has a lot of these video and text guides for how would you build the stealer, or how would you download the logs. And one thing that actually caught my attention when I was looking at this is the fact that here we see that Radamanthys can export in redline format as well. So this is pretty unusual, but like redline is one of the most like ubiquitous stealers out there, as we all know, and a lot of stealer log marketplaces are familiar with this format. So this is a relatively small touch, but demonstrates something that might have been a customer need that's being addressed in the product, which goes to show just how much attention the developer pays into making quality of life better for the malware operators. So let's take a look at the pricing model now. So like a lot of stealers nowadays, Radamanthys uses a subscription model, which follows a broader trend throughout software products. So actually, one thing to point out here is that besides the main server, they also have something called a shim server. And this is a proxy which collects requests for the server and then passes it onto the main server. That way, the threat actor isn't exposing their own infrastructure. And they also have something that they call a turnkey solution, where they provide pre-configured and ready-to-use server, both servers, the shim and the main. So this is another example of how they're trying to make their software accessible to a lot of the more novice users. So this compares the pricing strategies of some of the most popular stealers that are on the market currently. So we see here that a number of the stealers are actually priced at more or less parity with one another. So they're not really undercutting the main competitors, their main competitors, but they don't price themselves at a premium. So Raccoon and Vidar are kind of like the big players that have been around for a long time. And then like Lumen, Mystic, and Radamanthys kind of followed along with this pricing trend. We can also see that there's some stealers that are undercutting some of the higher price point, maybe trying to like penetrate the market and then provide a budget option. Redline is a bit of a special case because it's cracked, so maybe they weren't able to like sell higher just because of that. So in summary, it's clearly important to have a professional marketing strategy for differentiating yourself in a saturated market. Now we can kind of switch gears and like look into how they are being used. This is a lot of information, but the main takeaway really is how pretty quickly after they got advertised, there's been a spike in activity in like distributing the stealer. And like what's interesting about this part actually is that the first in the wild sample appeared around August, so we don't really know whether maybe the stealer has been available through some other means previously, or this was being internally tested. Also, we see that it has been used as a loader for 8-base ransomware and Smoke Loader and System BC right around July. So this is an in-the-wild use case of it being used as a loader rather than a stealer. So here we see unique Radamanthys builds distributed by various botnets over time since August 2022 to present. So we see there is a lot of early adopters, and like it's kind of the usual suspects. Like you've got Amaday, you've got your Smoke, and you've got your private loader, and it's not really surprising just because like they've always been there. We do see that there's kind of a drop around May. This is around the time when Radamanthys pushed a major update, and maybe the reduction in distribution may be attributed to that. And we do see that it is still quite prevalent even till present. So this graph shows the number of active users per month, separated by the new and the returning users. So what we can infer from this is that there are a lot of first-time users that are interested in using the stealer and trying it out. But at the same time, we also have a healthy amount of customers that are returning. So we also actually see here that there's like a spike around January of both years, maybe related to the seasonal spike that we often see in e-crime following the Russian Orthodox holidays. You might also be wondering why the spikes look a little bit different here compared to the other slides. And that's because I did take some liberties with deduplicating based on the ID part, which I mentioned. So here we can see the ID represented in red. It's like a 16 bytes, and it's a part of the config. But what's interesting is that all of these C2 hosts, which were actually involved in distributing 8-base ransomware, are all associated with this ID. And all of these paths were also linked with these C2 hosts. So this suggests that this component of the configuration might be related, or at least correlated with identifying the customers, although the analysis is still ongoing regarding this relationship. So in conclusion, we as analysts, we often fixate on the technical aspects of the malware that we are studying, but we need to remember the commodity part of commodity malware. So fundamentally, the stealers are products which are subject to similar rules of marketing and economics as consumer products. And while Radamanthys is a fairly sophisticated piece of malware from a technical perspective, it wouldn't have found the success that it had without having a marketing strategy to complement its product. Marketing is all about addressing needs of the customers, and as analysts, we need to understand the needs of the threat actors. And so we need to pay close attention to how malware developers are following these trends as well. So thank you so much for listening to my talk. Yeah, thank you. So I hope you found something useful.
You
I don't know if there's time for questions.
You want to try playing the sound again?
The sound again. Okay.
Maybe it works.
All right.
So maybe we replug it.
All right.
So maybe.
All
yeah.
right. Oh no. Oh no.
That's okay.
We're here again.
So go back to
All
the right slide.
Let's go back to the right slide. Oh my gosh, this is hard mode. Right, let's find it. Da-da. Here we go. All right. And then
Slideshow. Present to view something.
Actually, no, just regular should be fine.
Yeah.
Right. So it's plugged in now?
Yeah.
All right. I know. They cut off the best part.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you for all the graphical efforts in your presentation. In other presentations, but in this one, it was really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, the sound works. Okay, so we do the coffee break. You can jump around Bea for questions, not on Bea.
Oh God, please don't.
During the coffee break. See you later.
Technical issues over there. So hi everyone. So today I'll be talking to you about Radamanthys, which is how they describe competitors. So let's take a look now at what's really interesting, which is the way that it utilizes wave steganography.
Okay, we're back. So, Joselio, some activities of APT actors, crime actors, first stage sample. It's self-explanatory, but a bit mysterious. Do you want a mic? Okay, you have the floor.
Thank you. Well, hello everyone. Thank you very much for being here today, because some colleagues told me that last night wasn't easy at all. It's okay, no, to be here. So, well, my talk is about, we are going to show how at VirusTotal we are tracking threat actors, APTs, and also cybercrime threat actors, just with images and also some artifacts that we are considering that are interesting to take into account when you are tracking these kind of campaigns that they are using Word documents or PDF or others. So just a summary about myself. This is Joselillo, coming from the south of Spain. Right now I'm working at VirusTotal as a security engineer. Previously, I have been working at McAfee and /Trellix as a security researcher and also in BlackBerry in the CTI team. There you have my social media, just in case you want to give me some feedback about the presentation, or if you have any idea about how you can do similar things that we are going to see today during the talk. So the presentation, the agenda for today, we have these 4 points. First of all, I will explain why I decided to do this research. I think this is important to know, to understand the rest of the presentation. Then I will explain the research for itself, the results that we obtained during all these months that we were working on this. Then we are going to see some in-the-wild samples that we found related to APTs and crime actors. And finally, we are going to discuss the limitation and conclusion about the research, because there are some limitations that we cannot do it through VirusTotal, but maybe in other platforms or using other technology like the AI or something like that can be nice to have into account. So first of all, as I said, let me give you a small summary about why I am here explaining this research. So usually when you are doing threat hunting, all the threat hunters, or not all, but most of them, and also detection engineers, are focused on the intermediate and also the final phases of the kill chain, from exploitation to installation, command and control, and acting on objectives. The reason is because usually we have more data sources there, we have more information there. Usually when there is a vendor sharing some insights about APTs or whatever, they are sharing more information on those phases because it's easy to get that information at the end. But there are other phases that are also important. It's where we wanted to take this research in the delivery and also in the weaponization phases, okay? So today we are going to talk about those 2 phases and how we are tracking the threat actors there. But let me also explain you something that is interesting, because there is a color bias, there is a color theory that in most of the platforms that we have nowadays in relation to cybersecurity, there are colors where you can see that if something is malicious or something is not malicious, and are related with the green and with the red. So in VirusTotal, you have those colors as well. If something is malicious, you are going to see the red color, but if something is not malicious, or there are not engines that are triggering the specific sample as a malicious, you are going to see that sample with the green color. So there are hundreds of color psychology studies that have demonstrated that the colors can profoundly influence our decision making. So usually the green color means that something is good, and the red color means that something is bad or malicious. And if you didn't realize, in this slide, you have the word wrong in the wrong color. I mean, in the green you have the malicious word, and in the red you have the benign word. and if you didn't realize about that, it's because the color bias at the end. So why I am explaining this? I am explaining this because let me show you just an example. This is a Sidewinder sample, which was uploaded to VirusTotal this year. So there you have some URLs and domains that are related to this specific sample. And probably if you start doing hunting or whatever, you start doing the analysis of this sample, you are going to click on the red colors, on the URL, and also on the domains that you have in the contacted domains section. If you go scroll down in the same sample, you are going to have the compressed parents, and probably you are going to click on the zip file just to see if in the same zip file there are other malicious artifacts. And then we have the bundle files that probably you may click on the XML file, which will likely contain the macros related to this Word document. But there are other files that usually we are not doing some clicks in VirusTotal and probably in other platforms that are in green. And that I would say that are not sexy at all because our images are XML files and probably we are not to waste our time clicking on those files. So because of that, I was trying to figure out if we could create something or we could give some insight about how we can track threat actors using those specific files that are bundled in the Word documents and also in other kind of documents like PDF or emails. So what is there in common in all these files? All these files are related to APT threat actors. All these files were used during the delivery phase of the kill chain. And all these files contain images at the end, okay? And those images can be used to monitor some activities related to threat actors that we have identified that were using the same image during a specific time in different Word documents, okay? So if we are able to get those images and track the images in order to create some kind of lifehack or something like that in VirusTotal or in other platforms, we can identify when there is a new document using the same image that we found previously, okay? So now I'm going to explain you how I did this research, okay? We are going to focus mainly for the Word documents on the bundle files, okay? And in the bundle files, we are going to take into account in this research only the images, the styles XML file, and the content types XML file, okay? Then we have also the PDF documents, and instead of having bundle files, in this case we have drop files in VirusTotal. And we are going to focus also on the images that are dropped by the PDF files and other kind of artifacts that are dropped during the execution of the PDF in our sandboxes. And finally, we have other kind of document. In this case, we are going to see email, and the emails have something similar as we have with the PDF or the Office document, the bundle files. But we have also another section in the emails that is called email attachments that can be used for this purpose. So let me introduce you why in the Office document we are getting that, or we are going to take in consideration this information. First of all, the images. As I said before, there are some actors that are using images, some of them related to governments or companies in order to deceive the victim and give or try to be executed in the system, not just to give more confidence, let's say. There is also another artifact, which is called the content types. And this file specifies the content types and relationships within the Word document, and is automatically created when you have the Word document or you are creating the Word document in your system, okay? So for example, if in your Word document you are embedding some image, then the content type is going to add a line telling that a PNG format, for example, file is embedded inside the Word document, okay? And then we have the styles, which store stylistic definition for the document. So, for example, if I want to create, let's say, a new title in my Word document, and I can call the title as a Joselillo, for example, that information can be stored within the styles in the Word document, okay? So the facts that we have identified is that some threat actors were using the same image in multiple documents used by the same threat actor at different moments in time. We have identified as well the use of the same content types in multiple files used by the same threat actors and by different threat actors sharing the same content type. And we have also identified some styles that were also used, the same specific styles in multiple documents by the same threat actor and different threat actors. But I have to say that the content type is sometimes quite generic. I mean, probably here we have Word documents created in our systems, and we are sharing the same hash of the content type because it's a file that is quite generic and is only storing the information about the entities that we are embedding inside the Word. And sometimes the styles are also generic, but I would say that the styles files are a bit more specific for some kind of documents, because at the end you can create your own style for your Word document, and the threat actors usually, sometimes they are using that, or they are doing that as well in their operations. Just to give you an example, this is a content type file. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this is an example of a content type. There you have the different definitions that are inside your Word document, and then this is an example of the styles XML file, which is embedded also in the Word document. So as I said, this is not that definite, let's say, way to tracking and identify new samples related to threat actors, but can help us to do pivoting and also to do threat hunting in relation to some kind of threat actors and documents that we saw in the past. So let's see now some of the results that we obtained during the research. First of all, the scope of this research was made based on these threat actors and documents that we identified. In this case, this is only for the Office documents, not for the PDF, okay? I decided to do this research. Being honest, I have no idea, but because I found a lot of Word documents related to these threat actors in VirusTotal, so I thought that it was a good idea to start with this. So, okay, this is an example of APT28 images used during their documents. So what we are seeing here is, or are all the images that were used by APT28 in this case. All the colors are related to, and the hashes are related to images that were within the Word document of APT28. And then in the right side, you have the number of documents that were that specific image found in VirusTotal. So, for example, last one, although you are seeing just one bullet, there is at least 2 or more samples that were identified using that specific image. And if we take a look into the images just to see the content, first of all, the first image is just a line. There is nothing interesting in the image for itself. Maybe it's automatically embedded for some software that is creating Word documents or whatever. And this image is or appears in more than 100 files as a parent. I mean, this image was used in other 100 files, not related to APT28, but related to whatever other kind of threat actor, or even for bending documents, not malicious one. The second image is an insignificant image of a hand, and this image was found in another 14 documents embedded. So we are going to take a look of this image later. The third one is a fake Office-enabled content image, which was found also in another 13 different documents as a compressed, okay, not related to APT28. That image, I don't know what is that exactly, but same as the first sample. That image was embedded in other 100 files. And finally, the last one is a fake EDA roadmap of the European Commission, and it was embedded within other 4 documents. And the curious thing here is that the extension of this image was EMF. It wasn't a PNF or GPG or whatever. So it's an old format that was used by Microsoft Office or something like that, as I could understand. So taking as an example the image of the insignificant hand, we are going to see that if we go to VirusTotal, as we saw previously, that image contains 14 compressed patterns. And all those 14 Word documents were using that specific image when it was created. And then if we take into the information that are related to those specific documents, all of them were related to a Mandian report that was targeting, or APT28 was targeting hospitality sector. And if we go to the details of the specific Word document that were distributed in this case, all the Word documents were something similar like this. And as you can see, there is the image of the hand. Just having that image, let's say, creating some kind of lifehand or whatever in VirusTotal, you can track in the future new samples that could be used in the same image for whatever other purpose. It's just an example. Just to give you another example, different. There we have the different images used by Sidewinder in this case, but we are going to focus especially on that specific image, which is a signature, okay? That image, which is related to a signature, was also used by Sidewinder in 2 different samples. The first one was in 2021, and the second one was in 2022. So this means that if we were able to track the image during that specific period of time, we could identify the new sample related to this group in 2022. Because the samples were something like this. Were pretty similar, but were different at the end. And they were using exactly the same signature at the end of the document, okay? So this is another example just to show you how this research can be used in your daily basis. So this is the header of the same documents, and the signature in this case was related to a Barber Villar header, which is let's say somebody from, I don't know exactly where, but it's related to international relations, and these documents related to Sidewinder were targeting, if I'm not mistaken, Pakistan government, which is one of the countries that is focused at this APT in this case. So now talking about the content types and not the images, in this case I compared the Gamma-Red samples that share the same content type, okay, on at least 2 or more occasions, okay. So as I said in the beginning, some of these content types are, let's say, somewhat more generic than seen in other samples. Another gave me results only from Gamma-Red. So as you can see here, there are multiple content types. All these hashes are related to the content types of the document related to Gamma-Red. And the bullets are the samples that we found in VirusTotal and related with the day when it was uploaded to VirusTotal. As I said before, although you are seeing just one bullet here or here or here, there are at least 2 or more samples that were sharing the same content type. And the same information for the styles. These are the styles related to Gamma-Red that we found used during the different period of time related to this threat actor. As you can see, the difference, or the main difference that I found in relation to the content types, the content types and the styles, is that, as you can see in the content types, there are more samples that were uploaded to VirusTotal and may be used by the threat actor during the time. Instead, in the other hand, for the styles, what we saw is that some specific styles were used specifically in a short period of time for, I don't know what reason, but it's something that was interesting for us, and we identifying most of the threat actors during the research. So the other thing that I wanted to do was, taking into account of the styles related to Gamma-Red, I created a graph to see the different clusters that were related to each of one of the styles that I found in this research. So what you are seeing here is all the different styles that I found related to Gamma-Red and all the parents, word parents that were embedding or using that specific styles in order to see different clusters and identify some kind of patterns or whatever. And that's what I did. I tried to get some pattern, create some Jara rule, run the Jara rule in VirusTotal, get the results, run the retrohang in VirusTotal, get the results, and see if there are some new styles or or similar styles that could be related to Gamaredon or maybe other threat actors from the same region, because I was using some kind of patterns related to the language and so on. And this is the result. The result gave me some results, some new samples related, or some new styles, XML files related to other malwares that were found in VirusTotal, not related to Gamaredon in this case, but was interesting to see some of them. So we are going to focus especially on this one, just to give you another example about instead of using images to do pivoting, how you can use the styles to do the pivoting. So this is an style related to Gamaredon, and it contains 17 compressed patterns. All of them are Word documents, and if we take a look into the Word documents that are sharing the same styles, we are going to see that all of them, or almost all of them, were having this specific format. And this document is related to the Embassy of Ukraine in Hungary. Something interesting from these files that I found and helped me to do another kind of pivoting, was all the images that you are seeing here. All these icons are images that were also embedded within the Word document. So taking, for example, the Facebook image, we can get another pattern that we observe, in this case, for Gamaredon in relation to the images. And as you can see, all these different documents that are uploaded in the same time using different images. Remember that each color is a different image that we found used by Gamaredon in this case. All of them were related to the same kind of document of the Embassy of Ukraine in Hungary. So there you have, for example, for the Facebook icon, if you start doing pivoting, you are going to see that there are 12 other documents related to that specific image. So another question that I asked to myself was, are there styles that are being shared between different threat actors? And the answer was yes, but as I said before, this doesn't mean that they are sharing documents or sharing artifacts, but it's something that is worth to take into account and research deeply. So there are some of the different styles that were shared by some threat actors, and in fact, we are going to focus on those two specific, or these specific styles, which was shared by Tiger, APT28, and USC 0099, because it's something interesting that I saw related to this specific style that was shared, was shared by these three threat actors. Okay, so taking the documents related to APT29 and USC 0099, we are going to see that in VirusTotal, those documents that were used in the same styles are these. For example, the left one is a document related to APT28 and was reported by X-Force and Trend Micro. And as they say, this is a campaign, or it was a campaign related to APT28. However, in the right side, we have the document, or two different documents that are related to UAC 0099, and it was reported by Deep Instinct threat research team. Both files, or the three files, all of them are sharing the same styles and the same content types. So we don't really know if maybe all of them could be related to the same threat actor or not, but it's something that is interesting to see with more details. And the same as I did with the style XML, I did it also with the content types, and I asked to myself if there are some content types shared between threat actors, and yeah. But honestly, the result for this specific artifact, some of them were not quite, I could say, good at the end, because some were some content types that were very, very generic and were used by many threat actors, but not only threat actors, also for other documents created by legged companies and so on. And the next thing that I was interested to take was using the AI to get information about the images, because it's something that we are exploring and see if we can maybe in the future add into the platform, is for every document that I was finding during the research, I wanted to ask to Gemini, the Google AI, if can recognize what is in that specific image, because with that I can create some kind of a script or application and try to store all the documents that are having or embedding some specific image related to governments or whatever, and if there is a government logo or something similar, I'm going to get some kind of alert to take and see what is going on in that specific document. As you can see, there are some results. The result for those kind of images that were related to logos of governments or people or whatever were good at the end. As you can see, all the different results is giving me the correct answer. But being honest, for other kind of images where the results were not good at all, because, for example, the first one, I don't know what is that specific image, but Gemini was telling me that it was a Citi, Deutsche Bank, and MasterCard and Visa. So, and probably the same for the rest, no? This one also, the image related to war, was telling me that it was a Pepsi and Sprite logo. Okay. It's something that we, probably using other kind of LLMs or ChatGPT or whatever, maybe we can have other kind of results. If you are wondering, we try also the DHAS modifier that we have included in VirusTotal. So in this case, as you can see, all these images are related to the coat of arms of Ukraine. Looking for the similarities related to each of them, for example, for the first sample that we are seeing there, there at the top, when you look for that specific DHAS in VirusTotal, you are going to get only this other image related to the same coat of arms of Ukraine. And if you look for this other, the other result that you are going to obtain is the second one. It's not working well at all. Sometimes for other kind of research that we did related to AI, ChatGPT, malicious application, and so on, we got good results. But in this case, for these kind of images that I was looking for, the results were not good at all. But well, sometimes can be useful as well. And now I'm going to explain you how we are doing, or you can use these kind of artifacts for the PDFs. Well, we are going to see an example of Blind Eagle, which is a cybercrime group based on Latin America. This sample is a sample that was distributed to some victims during this year. And if you open the PDF, you are going to see something similar to this. Okay, that is an screenshot that is generated by our sandboxers. And something that we didn't realize is that we are using Adobe Acrobat Reader in our sandboxes, which means that when there is a PDF opened by our sandbox and is executed, Adobe Acrobat Reader is going to create a screenshot of the first page of the PDF, and then we are storing that screenshot as a Dropbox file in our results that can be used to do pivoting and identify new PDF using the same kind of screenshot. Okay? The limitation here is that if you change some logo or you change the font size or the colors of the PDF, the screenshot is not going to be exactly the same. So you are not going to get the results. But for some campaigns that we observed, there were multiple PDFs using exactly the same content distributed to multiple victims. So as you can see here, in the same PDF, if you go to the drop files, you are going to see the BMP file, which is generated by Adobe Acrobat Reader. And in this case, if you click to do that specific BMP file, you are going to see the execution patterns, which are the other PDF files related to Blind Eagle campaign in this case, okay? And that's the image that is generated by the Acrobat Reader software. And there are also other artifacts that are generated by our sandboxes that also will be interesting to do some kind of pivoting, okay? So this is another different sample related to Blind Eagle, and if you can see there in the drop files of this specific PDF, there is a C++, it's not a C++, it's a JavaScript. We did something bad there to categorize the file, but the thing here is that if you start doing pivoting on that specific JavaScript, you are going to see other files related as well to Blind Igor that were using that specific artifact. And what's that artifact? I was trying to identify and understand what was that artifact. And the artifact was related to SharePoint. Okay, something that is good also for us that we didn't realize in our sandboxes is that if you have a PDF, you execute, the PDF is going to be executed automatically, and if there is a link in the PDF, the sandbox is going to click on the link and is going to visit the website through Google Chrome. This artifact was dropped by Google Chrome in this case and was related to, as I said, SharePoint. So as I could see in this campaign, the government of Colombia is using SharePoint. So when you are visiting the main web page, or I don't recall exactly which path was, you are having dropped some kind of artifacts from the website, which means that if there are other samples in various data that are doing some kind of communication with the government of Colombia, are going to have that specific drop file as well. And you can do pivoting in order to get new files that could be related to the same campaign or different campaign, just because the sandbox is generating that specific artifact as a drop file, which is cool. It's another feature that we didn't realize that we have, but we have. It's something interesting to take into account. And just to finish the presentation, let me show you another example about emails. Well, on November last year, I reported, sorry for the Spanish, because it was a campaign which was mainly targeting countries in LATAM, and there were some kind of campaign that was trying to impersonate some university from Colombia, Chile, Argentina, and other countries. The email in this case had something like this that you are seeing. In this case, the email was related to, or was trying to impersonate the University of Chile. And as you can see, there are some images in the email which are related to the building of the University of Chile. But for me, the most important ones are the ones that are in the footer, which are related to social media networks. So what I did in this case was start doing some kind of pivoting during this research using the images related to the social media. So what I found in this case, for example, through the, I think it was through the Instagram icon, I saw that there were other 33 different emails using exactly the same icon related to Instagram for impersonating other universities, not only from LATAM, but also from the rest of the Europe. So we could identify new emails related to this campaign, probably by the same productor, targeting the University of Bucharest, the University of Colombia, University of Vietnam, and others. So just clicking just one image, we could identify new samples related to the same campaign, okay? So conclusions. We can potentially trace malicious activity, just tracking some kind of artifacts, not only these three that we saw in this presentation, content types, styles, and images, but I am pretty sure that there are also some other artifacts that are interesting to take into account in order to get new samples or track introductors. Today, we don't incorporate the bundle files in the JSON structure to create lifetime rules. It's something that we are working on. You are going to have that in the future. But for the drop files, we have. So you can create lifetime rules in various total just to identify if it's dropping some kind or some specific file has some file. So it's something that you can have into account. So in certain situations, the styles and content types can provide valuable clues for identifying new activity related to introductors. The method presented here offers an alternative to the traditional threat hunting that we already know. It's not the definitive way, but it's a complementary way to do threat hunting. Well, there you have my email. There you have also our contact us. Yeah, we are happy to see feedback from the community. Thank you very much.
Okay, so could the next speakers just get closer to the podium? And we have time for one question quickly. Yeah. Oops, that's dangerous.
thank you for the talk. Very interesting approach. I understand that most of what you showed today is rather based right now on like manual research and analysis. My question is, do you plan like automating, like generating some, I would say, kind of fingerprint from different documents, and then maybe also including it in a VirusTotal platform, like you can find related documents based on that kind of similarities?
Well, what we are planning to do, or at least we are trying to get more information about this, is for those documents that are embedding some kind of images, what we want to do is like add a new, I could say, metadata field, or I don't know how we are going to call it, saying that that specific document was embedding an image related to something. So for example, let's imagine that there are multiple documents using the image of the French government. If you have a field in VirusTotal that you can just click to pivot to other documents telling you that are using the French image of the government, is something that we are exploring, and that can be really nice for the community in order to identify new documents using that specific image. But for the styles and content types, we are not planning to do anything with that, because at the end it's not the definitive approach to track or to have some kind of fingerprint related to the documents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on. C'est pas bon? Okay. Ready? So, how do you say your first name? Fouk? Yes. Yeah, okay. Fouk and Damien, you have the floor. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. Today, during this speak, we will speak about malware classification, rootkit detections on IoT devices using side channel and more precisely electromagnetic emanations. So all this work has been funded thanks the ANR ANA, where the goal was to side channel can help against malware. And it was owned by Anneli Eisa. The main contributor of this work is Dwi Phuc Phan. He made this nice work during his PhD. He's now threat intelligence and malware researcher at Trellix. He's the malware guy behind this work, and I'm the side channel guy behind this work, and I'm currently assistant professor at Rennes University.
Right. Thank you. Okay, for the outline of today's presentation, going to be the introduction, why we want to do on this topic, and then we'll show you how did we set up with all of the acquisition, data processing, pre-processing, processing, and then the results. And that, why this topic then? Yeah, we see the trending of attacks on embedded devices, IoT devices as well. The difficulties for the antivirus solution on IoT devices is because the embedded devices or IoT devices have been constrained by the resource computing power or the diversity of the devices. We have too many architectures on the embedded devices from ARM, from MIPS, PPC, and etc. Also, the IoT malware dataset is kind of lack in the reality as well. The topic is also about another way to detect malware. Somehow it's trying to anti the malware detection evasion. So before we dive into our talk, let's take a step back onto the traditional of malware detection or malware analysis. We always have some of the kind with static analysis or dynamic analysis. Nowadays we have interactive analysis where you pivoting the IOC, trying to enriching your malware report. And all of those were to answering, I think, three main goals for detect the malware, saying the verdict of the malware. Is the malware similar to any other campaign, any other malware family, or to clustering or classify the malware, right? But however, there are malware evasion techniques. For example, the static analysis from the yesterday talk, we have seen the more than 500 kilobyte of bytecode into one function and using control flow flattening, right? Those are the malware obfuscation. And malware packer also can evade the static analysis. For dynamic analysis, we have anti-debugging, anti-sandbox, and somehow in our research, we have a technique calling side channel information where the malware trying to read the sensor. For example, the CPU sensor, the CPU temperature, the fan of the computer, just to answer is that the malware is running inside a sandbox or just a normal computer. We have, nowadays we have many detection technology, right? EDR, XDR, but however, there are the evade of behavioral detection or the gap in the detection capabilities. So all of the techniques we see, it have one common point, that it relies on the device, relies on the software level of device. So what about we step out of the device and we monitor the execution or monitor the activities from the outside device. So regardless of what the device is going on, it's just a black box, and we monitor the activities from outside device. So it comes to us to a side channel. So side channel has a long history. I think in the World War II, the German army successfully intercept the telecommunication of the Allies by listening to the ground current on Earth. And recently we have the Tempest from NSA, we have Spectre, Meltdown with the side channel attack on the CPU. We have some research that can just listening to the sound of the environment to do a keylogger. So it's like listening to the sound and predicting the keystroke. So in this topic, we don't do side channel attack, but we are more into the side channel analysis. So from an embedded device, there will be many side channels around it. For example, the electromagnetic emanations from the device, the power consumption of the device, the timing attack, or the sound, the catch attack, or the heat of the device that can tell you something about the activities that it's running under the device. So in our research, we don't want to rely on the software, like I said previously. So we don't do catch, side channel attack, we don't do performance counter, but mostly we rely on the electromagnetisms emanated from the devices. To do so, we look into the state of the art to see how did people in the research community have working on about the topic. Some of them doing the anomaly detection using the power consumption and the electromagnetisms. But in our work, it's going to be classify IoT malware automatically by using the electromagnetism. So it's no anomaly detection, but this is malware detection. The second thing in the state of the art is still lack of the side channel detection for the real world malware. So instead of real world malware, mostly the research was focusing on the laboratory crafted malware. It's not something like I found it on VirusTotal, but it's more like a lab created malware. Also in the research is still, there is a lack of research with the malware that have been obfuscated, have been packaged. So I think most of the research in the state of the art just assuming that the malware is already unpacked, and then they do the research on that. But in our research, we're gonna do both the real-world malicious one and the benign IoT dataset, and then we classify it and detect it as well. For the malware, when it's running on the device, obviously there will be malicious behavior. But what about the stealthy malware? For example, the rootkit. When you got infected, they just do nothing, right? They just sleep, just wait for the command maybe a years later. How it's gonna work with our solution? Like our solution is monitor the electromagnetics, but what if the malware is a stealthy rootkit? So we kind of doing a kind of a bet, just trying to trigger the behavior of the rootkit, but we're gonna dive into that later. So for the framework overview, it can be divided into 3 phases. The first one is data acquisition. We have the data set of malware. We generate also with obfuscation and packer. We run it in the synthetic user environment or the embedded device. And during the execution, we monitor from the outside of the device the electromagnetism, recorded it into the data storage. For the data pre-processing, the data, you know, like the data from the side channel or the EM, mostly the raw traces in time domain, we need to convert it or short-term Fourier transform it to a spectrogram. We're selecting the features and then feed it into the models with both machine learning and deep learning. All of the code and the data set of our work has been open sources, so just feel free to have a look. But however, in our research, we'll also be consisting of 2 projects. One is the AMA. The AMA is for the malware classification. So it's like all kind of embedded IoT malware we take into the dataset and we're trying to classify it. And then the second project is, we call it Ultra, mostly focused on the rootkit detection. So for the Ultra, we only take the data set of multiple rootkits, and we do the detection on those kind of rootkit. For example, in the ARMA, we did a kind of a collection from the virus total and virus sign. We just take the mostly used one, like the Mirai, the Gonagai, rootkit, some rootkits, and the Baseline. Also into the data set, we collect the benign activities as well, like just doing a random Linux command or playing audio from the embedded device, record from the camera, taking picture, record video, encode video, and etc. For the malware, after we got the native malware, we also do the obfuscation on that, like adding the opaque predicate, virtualize it, or control flow flattening, etc., and UPX spike as well. For the ransomware, we try to vary it by not only using the default blowfish algorithm for the WannaCry, but we also add the AES and DES as well. So we have like really wide variations of the malware collection. And for the rootkit, so the rootkit are collected for both the kernel space and the user space as well. The benign activity is just like the same, just Linux activity, record camera, and doing any user IoT devices. But also we're collecting the kernel drivers, the firewall, etc., because we think that those kind of drivers may mess up with our solution later, like we can just detect the kernel driver benign one as a rootkit is not good, so we're also collecting those kind of things. For the rootkit dataset, we collected 7 different rootkits. You can see like they have also a wide varieties of different features, from hiding the file, the sniffing on network, keylogger, RAT, local privilege escalation as well. Also, some of the rootkit has been obfuscated as well. For the target device, we wanted to have a kind of a device that can run as many possible malware, right? So Raspberry Pi was a choice, and Raspberry Pi was running on ARM. The other one we picked was the Creator CI20, and that one is running on MIPS. So we have two architectures. Also the malware also we have been collecting can work on the two architectures as well. Now coming to how we record the electromagnetism. So for the first project was using, we were using the oscilloscope, we call it, or it is the picoscope one. It's kind of cheap, but not very cheap. Why? Because it costs 10 grams for the oscilloscope. In academia, it's like affordable, but yeah, it's not very cheap. This kind of a standard device in the side channel community, and the device have been monitored in 2.5 seconds at 2 megahertz sampling rate, and we got around 200,000 traces, cost us around 2 terabytes of data. So after all of the experiments, we got 2 terabyte data. And later on, with the rootkit project, we tried to be more flexible and adaptable, and like more suitable and affordable as well. So we moved from the oscilloscope to the SDR. So the SDR is like the software-defined radio. It is very portable and affordable. So what we got was the Hack RF SDR, I think is about 200 euros only. And we recorded in 0.5 seconds in a 2 megahertz window. And finally, we got more than 800,000 traces and cost us 6.6 terabyte data. It's for the training the model. The other thing with the side channel is that you need to have a trigger. So before you do the experiment, or before you record the data, before you run the malware, you need to have a trigger to tell the data, and also to tell the oscilloscope when the record will happen. So for the AMA, it starts at the beginning when the malware installation, and then we stop the trigger. So actually we recording the malware activities running on the device. But for the rootkit solution, actually in here we are not going to monitor the malicious behavior of the stealthy rootkit, because obviously there's no behavior, they're just sleeping, right? So we created, or we defined a thing called a bet. So a bet is either a software or hardware stimulus, and have 3 requirements. The first one is that we create a bet with the assumption that we don't know the modus operandi of the rootkit in advance. So it's just black box. We are not going to reverse engineering the rootkit, right? The second thing is that the bet is going to be a variable duration time. So we can control the bet remotely. And the third requirement is that it shouldn't be distinguished from the common benign behaviors. So it should be running just on an unprivileged execution, or just running on user space. So just a normal activity. And the malware cannot distinguish the bet that this is something like a sandbox. It's a sandbox actually, but it's not a bet, or it is a bet or not. So for example, this is a very traditional rootkit thing. In the left side of the screen is a system call interception of the system call of the queue. So from the user space, it's called a queue. It's called an API queue, and it called to the kernel space the system call of the queue. But in the right side of the screen, when the device got infected by the diamorphine rootkit, the queue API has been overwritten by the hack queue, and over that it has a switch. If the signal sent to the queue command is one of the 3 different signals, it can be to hide the process ID of any process in the user space. It can give the root permission to the lower level of the device, or it can hide the module of the rootkit itself. It's just like hide itself, right? So all of those signal will go before the real queue system call. This is how the diamorphin hooked into the system calls. And with our bit, it will go onto the red line. It just go, we don't know, because we just assume that we don't reverse engineering the rootkit. So when we have the bit, we just call a normal queue, and those queue will go to the red line. Just don't go to any malicious one. But however, that switch, that signal switch, is cost about 14 lines in assembly. Yes, very tiny piece. But when we do with the side channel and we run it multiple times, classify or can understand.
Algorithm, it did not work at all. Think that these bandwidths are more information that we can use. We, just for detail, we use a pretty huge window and also a huge overlap in order to defeat the problem of desynchronization. But the problem now, if we go to this, we can't fit the classification algorithm because the data is too big and it will slow down our analysis and does not scale. So what to do with this? It's something really usual in side channel. We will do feature selections. And also known in classification algorithm, you will not use all the data, but you will select some point on the STFT representation, so the time frequency representation. And since we know that we had some problem of resynchronization due to not really accurate triggered, we select full bandwidth. And the NICV, that it's pretty known techniques in side channel to get like which port has more influence or is more linked with the class we have. And so we just take this, take the max of the NICV and select this bandwidth. So we can we can sort the bandwidth by influenced by our distinct classes. So what we did is just extracted bandwidth and try to classify using only this bandwidth. And so for ANA, we just take one bandwidth, try to classify at 1, at 2, at 3, at 4, and when we reach the maximum, we stop during the training. And for the Ultra, we developed a more smart method, like we try to add one, we try to add another one. If the accuracy decrease, we remove. If it increase, we keep, and we keep going until we tried all the bandwidth with a limited number in order to fit and to be able to compute everything. And before going to the result and of the classification, obviously, the results that I will present is on testing. So we take all our data set, we take a part for the learning, we take another part for the testing. Obviously, there are no overlap between both. And yeah, that's it. And so now, let's go to the classification. We used two usual algorithms, so machine learning algorithms, the SVM and the naive Bayesian. And we also handcraft two small deep learning algorithm, one MLP and one CNN. When I say small, we just have like 3 layers. If I well remember, we have some additional slide if you have a question on it. And we also add some other, for the machine learning, in order to speed up, we use some reductions of dimension algorithm. So for the classification, so for AMA, we use the kernel's LDA, while for Ultra, we use PCA. And for the deep learning, we did not use any CNN for Ultra because we get really good result with MLP, that it's quicker to execute than the CNN. The CNN is the one that takes more time. So we choose to only naive Bayesian, SVM, and MLP for Ultra, while for AMA, we also used CNN. Here, the first results that I will present for the classification. So what we did, the first scenario we tried it, can we classify the family of the malware, just giving a trace, extracting the bandwidth, and giving it to our model? Can you classify well or not? I would say, yeah. We reach for the Raspberry, using the CNN, we can reach 99%, more than 99%. And with the CI20, so the MIPS, we get more than 96% of classification. We can see the distinct class and which population is in each class. So it's 6 distinct family. Then we wanted to try something. It was the step just before doing detections, because here it's only classification since we triggered the installation. But what we did is we removed some sample from the training set, and so it means that the model never see, for example, when you see the GonnaCry family, you never see the AES UPX1, or never see the GonnaCry AES. But can you classify it as a GonnaCry? I would say yes again. For the CI20, we reach more than 99%, and for the for the CI20, more than 29%, while for the Raspberry, we reached 96%. Here we can see that the MLP had better results. We think that because the CNN overlearned the sample of the learning set, so it can't really well classify the samples that you never see during the testing. And last, for the malware classification, before going to the Ultra results on detections, here we wanted to see if our models can say if which obfuscation have been used. So we can, the results are less than the other experiment, but we still have good results. On 7 distinct classes, we can say with more than 78% which obfuscation have been applied on the malware. It means that just recording the EM, giving it to our model, we can say which packer have been used, which packer or which obfuscation have been used. And, oh, sorry, I forgot this one. Also for classification, it's the last experience we did. It's can we say which malware is running? And yes, here we can see that we have a really high number of classes. So all the distinct malware we have and all the distinct obfuscation we had, so 35, sorry. And we reached a pretty high score with the CNN on Raspberry. I forgot to specify, but between the brackets, it's the number of bandwidth we selected. Now, here a big picture of the results we had for the rootkit. So what we did here is we just ran a getN on the device. We record the trace, and we record multiple traces like this. Some were infected, some with benign, and we compute the model. And we compute one model per rootkit. And so what we did, we compute model on each rootkit. So on the left is the rootkit we learn on. On the top, it's for CI20. On the bottom, it's for Raspberry. more it's blue, higher the score is. And so if you look here, it's when we try to detect a rootkit using the model of his own rootkit. So we compute a model with Burke, and we try to see if he can detect a Burke activity. And on CI20, with naive Bayesian and kernel PCA, we reach 100%. And the nice thing with the super idea of Fook is when we do a bait, we can do multiple bait and mean and do an average of the traces that reduce the noise, and it means that it increase the that give us the opportunity to increase the accuracy. And the nice thing also is if we look here using the Vlani model, so the model we computed using Vlani, we can detect also the other rootkits with 100%. And we also wanted, as folks said before, we wanted a kind of cheap, a cheap setup. So we tried to decrease the price of the probe. So on the right with the one, it's just a pen and a ferret to accrue the data, to accrue the EM, the electromagnetic emanation. So the second number, it's the probe type. So the nice one and the expensive one is 0. The one with 1 is the cheapest one. And the other number is the probe position. It means that we take the same probe, but we move it a bit. And we try to compute a model for each of them. And try if we take the model with the probe position 1, can it detect the probe position 0? I would say yes. It works well. But what about doing the acquisition with the expensive probe and testing on the cheap one? No, it does not work at all. But doing the acquisition with the cheap one, computing the model, and then testing with the cheap one works really well. We reach 100% again. Here, this result have been done with the open bait and targeting the Burke rootkit. And now let's go for a demo.
Cool thing. All right, here's the demo of the rootkit detection. If you see on the downside of the screen, here is the Raspberry Pi. That one is the HackIF SDR. We have an amplifier here connecting to the hidden cord, and here's the probe. And at the moment, the probe is untouched to the processor of the Raspberry Pi, right? This one is the result from the deep learning model. It's running on the server, and this one is SSH session on the device. So what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to installing the dimorphin rootkit by using the sudo insmod of the rootkit. And the rootkit has the feature to hide the file. So if a file name like dimorphin secret, then it will be automatically hidden from the folder. Yeah. And also, I also to making like some activities, some noises. So in case like you wonder, it's like we don't want to do like just the rootkit on the device, so it's obviously easy to be detected. But we want to do also activities as well. So what happened when I just connect the probe? I just move the probe here to touch on the processor of the Raspberry Pi. So you can see here, it's at the moment I record the traces, it's not been optimized yet, but you started to see that the model with around 0.5 second of real time, just continuously monitoring the EM here, can say that the rootkit is detected. I'm also trying to do some local privilege escalation as well. So at the moment we are at the Pi user level, but we're trying to get to the root to just to confirming that the rootkit is activated already on the device. And just do some stuff and then just read the etc shadow. So we got the root. And still the verdict is saying here in real time it is detected. And after that I just remove the rootkit and right away you can see the verdict just saying that now the result is just clean. It's not infected anymore. And the whole thing was recording outside the device. We didn't install any agent here on the device at all. Yeah.
Now let's conclude. So first thing, AMA and Ultra are fully open source. The data, the code, feel free to use, to fork, to modify. It's here to play with. We investigate real-world scenario, and it seems promising since we have like 100% of detections with a limited number of samples, we know. And the fun fact, it's not usual for academic paper. We get like some media coverage, but take care when you read it, because some of them say that we were using a Raspberry with a probe to detect on your own computer. No, we never did it. And the fun fact, if you open the first paper, one picture is a Raspberry Pi with a probe on top. I don't know what they did. And the perspective now. One really nice thing that would be really nice from my side channel point of view, it's how to identify really when which part is really used for the classification. Because we can say in the STFT, but not in the time domain, which part is really used. Increase the data set, an upcoming thread like eBPF rootkit, doing a standalone with just an JSON NVIDIA. This thing have been done by some students. I'm teaching, so I gave a project that they try to use and to do it. And it works with even lower number of samples, but they did it well. And it could be really nice to increase this. And here it's all the publication we did on this topic. Feel free to go, you can access online for free. And also the super thesis of Fook that is also available online.
PhD thesis.
PhD thesis, sorry.
PhD.
And thank you.
So Dr. Fook and Professor Damien, thank you for your talk. We'll take one or two questions. I'm going to catch up. I got one up there.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for the amazing presentation. I didn't quite get all the parts about the spectrography side of things, but I just wanted to know, since you take the assumption that you don't know how the rootkit works, like you took diamorphine and I think a couple others that are available on GitHub, so I think you can simply just go get the information on GitHub, but if you take a rootkit that you don't know and you don't want to reverse, how can you be sure that the baits are triggered?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. I think to do so, we need to list all of system calls. And for each system call, we compute the model for every system calls. So if the rootkit is unknown, and hopefully this is a kind of a syscall hooking rootkit, and if we have the models for more than 200 syscall, and then I think hopefully we will catch the rootkit. Yeah.
Last question.
Thank you. Awesome research, awesome presentation. I have many questions, but I'll just ask one. Why did you choose that frequency for SDR? Does it have to do with the frequency that the CPU runs? And does CPU frequency scaling affect your data acquisition?
Yeah. So I'm gonna answer this. So yeah, this one is also a good question. It's kind of a hidden work in our work to how to find it. I think the result when I got it, it's pretty quick, but it took me around 1 to 2 months to find the right bandwidth or the right frequency. So what I did was I scanned the whole from 0 to 2 gigahertz. And each of them, I took like each of the frequency, like I did only a chunk of 2 megahertz of it, from 0 to 2 gigahertz, fitting it into a very simple deep learning and picking the most accurate one. So in theory, it should be related to the processor frequency or double it, but in our experiment, it's totally different. The number of the frequency was different. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Damien. Fabian, no. Actually, how do you say Fabian or? Fabian, okay.
Any pronunciation is valid.
Sorry.
It always does that.
Yeah, so you need to, no, just a quick one. Go to diaporama, where is it? Yeah, and check, yeah.
Monitor to
Yeah. Or automatic. Okay, let's talk before the lunch. Fabian on TA 577.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm the person standing between you and lunch, so let's get this started. Very quick, who am I? So I work with Deutsche Telekom security for about 2 years now. But other than that, I come from a kind of research background, have worked at university for several years in the area of like network and IT security research. And right now, my main focus is this threat actor research and malware analysis, and especially in the area of cybercrime. What I'm going to talk about today is kind of like an attempt to get a big picture understanding of a threat actor named TA577, which is, I think, quite popular. Some people might have heard about it. And I'm going to start with like describing a little bit the history over the last 2 or 3 years. I'm going to very quickly talk about the malware, but this is not a malware-centric talk. We had great talks about iStudy in the morning. I think there's another talk about Peekabot coming up, so I'm going to keep this really brief, just one slide. What I really want to talk about is like how does this actor get so many high-volume campaigns running? What do they do on the web-based front? What do they do for the email spam distribution? And what can we learn from that, basically? And yeah, finally, I'm going to conclude and give some recommendations as well. So let's look a little bit at the history, starting up with a little bit of quick facts. So we know that this actor is probably active for over 15 years, so quite an experienced threat actor. We also see that they are very versatile. Only in the last year, they had 4 different initial access malwares. Like I already said, they launched very powerful campaigns. We have seen in the last year campaigns where they had over 200 different domains where they distributed their malware. And yeah, why do they do this? Basically to earn a lot of money. We don't do like cryptocurrency tracking, so I never attempted like to get an exact figure, but I'm sure it's worth doing it. And so with that, let's jump into a little bit of history lesson. First fact that I pointing out here is the Tramp persona, which was discovered through the Conti leaks. I'm sure a lot of you people are familiar with that. So Tramp was within the Conti organization. He was kind of a team leader. He was like coordinating negotiations with ransomware victims. He was also distributing money within his team. So he was quite a important figure in that organization. But also, we could see already in November 21 to these leaked chat logs that he was kind of unhappy with the way things went, with the infrastructure, with the software that they used, and he expressed the desire to create basically his own ransomware program, to create own software basically. And we will see where this is going in the next slides. And one important thing that I also added here, just for completeness, in December 2021, there was a really clear tie between this Tramp persona and the Quackbot botnet. He asked another member of the Conti group to crypt a sample named Stager1 TR-DLL. I think some of you might be familiar with the Quackbot TR botnet. This actor also called for that reason the TR distro actor by some groups. And so there's also really clear tie to this organization, this botnet. Yeah, then in February 2022, a lot of things suddenly happened. He asked the same person to crypt another malware sample. This time he said it's a new locker. So we might guess that this is what they have been working on during the last months after they said they are no longer really happy with what Conti is doing. And at the same point in time, he also basically disbanded the cooperation with affiliates within the Conti group, which is kind of interesting. Like, this is the point where he likely switched to running his own kind of stuff. And we can see that now. Starting March 2022, there was a new Quackbot botnet. First it was called AA, then later on they switched basically to naming it BB, BB01, and so on. And we have seen in many incidents that this correlated with later on follow-up activities leading to Blackbuster incidents. And in fact, many believe that BB is just an acronym for Blackbuster. And no long after that, like only 1 month later, Blackbuster was first seen posting victims to their leak blog. And they didn't start slow. In fact, they had over 10 victims on their blog only in the first month. And I want you to keep note of this time correlation. Like in March 2022, the malware got active. April 2022, the ransomware group is active. We will see that kind of time difference multiple times now. And they basically continued doing this for most of 2022. In December, they decided to basically do a break, which is also quite typical for this actor, that every now and then they take a break. And usually when they do it to develop something else, something that they come up after the break, some new maybe infection chain, some new malware maybe. And this time, apparently it was a new malware, because in February 2023, we first saw the PikaBot malware. And we have proof that it was distributed through the same channels as the Quackbot BB botnet, with a lot of overlaps in indicators where we have seen attacks going on. And then, keep in mind, February 2023, malware spamming is resumed, and March, April 2023, Blackbuster resumes posting victims to their blog, likely as a consequence of resumed Quackbot and PikaBot attacks. Then I think also yesterday in the evening we cheered a little bit about the Quackbot botnet takedown. A lot of people kept asking me at this time, like, yeah, okay, are we done now? Like, do they stop? And I was like, nah, they're going to be back. And for sure they were back in September 2023, just kept using PikaBot. They had already prepared this new malware, and now they don't use Quackbot anymore and just use another malware, but otherwise continue what they have been doing for a long time. And Once again, September 2023, the malware gets active. October 2023, after some period of inactivity, Blackbuster continues posting victims. So likely not a coincidence. And so we see in summary that there's a lot of correlation between Picabot, between Blackbuster, and the affiliation to Quackbot as well. And all can be tied to activities of TA577. We're not the only people who have noticed this, of course. There's reports by Proofpoint, by Trend Micro, IBM X-Force, also others. Don't want to read it all, but basically they're also saying like overlaps between Qbot, Blackbuster, Picabot. Also IBM, for example, they analyzed the code of Picabot, saw similarities to code that was already used before in cryptors of the Blackbuster group. So yeah, kind of also not a coincidence, as I think. So yeah, a lot of things that indicate that this might be just one actor. Let's look a little bit more into the malware, but as I said, I will keep this really brief, just like mentioning it for completeness. I think there have been plenty of talks about Quackbot at this conference, so it's a really old malware. Has been intercepted by law enforcement last year. We have seen it coming back in December, but so far we think it's not playing a major role right now, but should keep an eye out for that. Picabot, at least in our assessment, seems to be the new go-to malware for TA577. We have seen it a lot since September last year, and basically continuing until the present date. Last week's is rather low activity, but I'm sure they will continue spreading it. And Picabot also, yeah, it's a very advanced malware initially. When it was first seen, we really had a hard time even getting it to run in sandboxes and stuff. So it's quite interesting. Occasionally, TA577 has dropped iced ID as well via the same channels, basically, as the other payloads that they use. We don't have a good explanation why they're doing this, why they are requiring this other malware. Our working theory is that maybe they are doing this as a service model, like renting out their distribution infrastructure to some other actor to distribute iced ID. Would love to hear maybe some theories that you have about this. So if you have a good idea or even some proof, like some overlap in infrastructure, then yeah, please get in touch. And then also briefly last year we saw Darkgate. So Darkgate got very popular in summer 2023. We also analyzed it, posted on our blog about it. And we saw TA577 shortly, basically just testing this malware. But other than that, they never used it again. So basically, I think they were just trying out if it's an option and then chose not to continue with that. Okay, so we know they are using all these malwares, but how do they actually get the malwares to the victims? That was the question that we were really trying to answer to better understand, like also how can we protect from that? So we found out that cPanel, which is kind of like a web-based server administration framework, is playing a crucial role in the malware distribution system. In every campaign, and they launch multiple campaigns per week if they are on a period of high activity, they had like campaigns with numerous URLs spanning a lot of servers, and we are basically asking ourselves, okay, how are they keeping up this high volume, this high amount of servers? How are they even getting access to such a number of servers? And we also quickly noticed like the affected hosts also contain legitimate content, so it's not an infrastructure that is purely set up for malicious purposes. And in, I would say 100% of cases where we checked, cPanel was on that host. So first we thought like, okay, they must have some exploit maybe and just go around and pwn all the devices. And we were able to get hold of a log of one of the affected servers. And we could not really find any activity that would hint that the server was exploited in some way. What we saw instead is just files kept appearing, not only uploaded from TA577, but also from likely other threat actors. And they appeared like as they were just legitimately uploaded via FTP or some other means. So that led us to the theory that they are just using like valid credentials to log onto the cPanel and then just upload files. And what we did is basically we pulled different sets of leaked credentials which are available on the darknet for cPanels. So there's a lot of forums offering cPanel credentials. And we did not do like a systematic analysis, but we saw like a lot of overlap between the people that were posting leaks and then subsequent malicious activity, including TA577, within a really close time frame. So what do they do actually when they infiltrate such a server? So first thing they do is put their web shell. I'm sure that some of you might have seen that. It's not a newly discovered asset. It's known for several years now. Basically what it does, it's just a simple uploader. So they have reduced like the number of available functions over the years. It was before like having more features, and nowadays the only things that you can do with a web shell is create a directory and upload a file to a directory, which is basically everything that they need to do. They password protect it with a random hash K. So for every server which they infiltrate, there's a unique hash, and if you don't know it, you cannot use the web shell basically. And in the past, it could be easily discovered just using the root URL or the root domain of the web server and appending /upl php, and if it was there, basically that was a prime asset to say, okay, TA577 is running some campaigns on this server. Sadly, they might have noticed that people were tracking them in this way, and so last year they started changing, and they basically renamed the shell to a number of random digits.php. And on every server, obviously choosing a different name. So you might even be able to make it out on the screenshot on the right, although it's quite small. We even saw servers where they basically pwned the server 2 times. First time they uploaded the old UPL PHP, and then like some weeks later they come back like dropping the variant with the random digits.php. I don't know for what reason. But we have seen that on multiple servers. There's still ways to find the web shell, but I'm not going to disclose it in TLP Clear. But if you want to know, come talk to me. So this is the first thing that they do, but then how do they actually distribute the malware? Do they simply put the malware on the servers? No. They have tried to not do this in most cases, I think because they don't want to give away that much on a server that they don't own, basically. So what they put instead is kind of a PHP-based proxy script. And what that does is basically it collects some information about the victim on each request and proxies it to a tier 2 infrastructure. And this tier 2 server seems to do some checks, like a geofencing or also anti-analysis based on the provided values. For example, within our sandboxes, we almost never get a payload back from these servers. And if you know what values to provide, you can get a payload, but really it's decided upon each request. So there's some mechanism in this tier 2 server to decide whether or not this victim is actually worth giving a payload out to it. And surprisingly, these tier 2 servers, they last quite a long time. They are hard-coded in this file, and we have seen one single IP being maintained for multiple months without someone taking action. At some point in time they change it and then they run it again for several months. And on on these backend servers, they also seem to have a lot of PHP scripts. So PHP seems to be like their tool of choice for server-side stuff. We have seen documents like router08.php, router_black.php, kvs.php, and also I think some others that we have seen infrequently. And also we noticed that there is some sort of authentication mechanism, like the backend server, the tier 2 server, checking if the request is actually coming from a valid pwned tier 1 server. And we're also thinking like this could be a cool like tracking mechanism, like talking to this tier 2 server, but this kind of authentication makes it a little bit difficult, so we're still looking for good ideas how to do this. So how does it look like, them operating on such a pwned server? Here's an excerpt of some of the logs that we analyzed. I redacted some of the values because we're doing this TLP clear. So we can see clear patterns here. There's always like 3 requests. 2 posts to the UPL PHP, likely like the make directory, and then the second request is the actual upload. And then like shortly after that, like only seconds or some minutes after that, another IP comes and checks if the download is working. Basically like they're validating if the script is working, if it's returning a payload. And this pattern repeats like for every time they create a new proxy script on the server. And what's very interesting is always like one IP does the make dir and the upload, and then there's another IP checking. And after we observed this for some time, we noticed like the same IP came back. So the same IP that initially like uploaded the proxy script, in the end came back checking on another IP that uploaded a proxy script. So it's very likely that this is just part of botnet, which is used as a proxy to basically talk to these servers. And also one indication of that is always the same user agent, no matter which IP is coming. So likely these are just proxies for whoever is behind that. So and we kept looking at this specific IP. And now we're pivoting basically to the malware spam distribution, because like now the actor is able to basically distribute malware, but how does he actually get the malware to the victims? And their prime method is just malware spam. And we kept looking at this one IP, and on VirusTotal, interestingly, we found 2 email samples associated with this IP. And when we looked at those, we saw in the headers that actually the same IP that was uploading the proxy scripts and then later on checking on another proxy script if the payload download is working, was actually also spamming. And it was spamming, also very interestingly, to a server that is also running cPanel. Like cPanel is not only like a web server administration tool, but also has a complete mail server built in. And we also noticed, like in the spam emails that we observed, it was almost always like servers that were running cPanel. And that leads us to the conclusion that the actor is basically using the clients of likely botnet hosts as a proxy to do whatever they do on the client side. And the servers, basically they use cPanel for the web-based malware distribution and also for their kind of spamming operation. And very interestingly also from these 2 emails, we could clearly attribute it to a certain campaign that was conducted by TA577, and it was in this case the BB30 and BB32 Quackbot botnet campaigns. So how does their malspam typically look like? Maybe there's some people here in the room familiar with it. So I will go over that quite briefly. So what they always do is like reply chain hijacking. So they use some previously existing mail conversation, which they have stolen in some way, and then kind of make their email look like a reply to this. And we spotted that there's some very characteristic items in their emails. So one thing is that they keep using like doubled or omitted letters in the subject, in the sender name, and also in the email body. This started someplace in last year, I don't know exact time, but before that we saw always, for the emails that we are getting, we saw always the sender name Telecom. And that was obviously very easy to filter out, like a sender name Telecom, and the domain was nothing like related to official telecom domains. And likely they noticed like, okay, yeah, people have no difficulties filtering out these emails. And so they are trying to make it look still like the actual victim name, but like doing some permutations. But then also like, yeah, there's a limited number of permutations, so your query just gets a little bit longer, maybe. Then a very interesting thing also, which they started like some months ago, they were using quite old emails in some cases to make their kind of reply. And a lot of people, like even non-technical people, spotted like, yeah, this is really old communication, like what's going on here? And so they kept changing, since some months, the year values in these emails. And now we're getting emails from the future. So we have in this email, for example, the 12th of May, and down there the 11th of May 2024, so cool email from the future. Thanks for that. And also they have a hard time with the German umlauts, so given that they mostly communicate in Cyrillic, I find that a little surprising that they likely have went through the pain of different encodings, but still don't get the German umlauts right. I don't know. And what they really love is the lorem ipsum names. So we have seen that like numerous times. So the attachment name, for example, here has the term commodi in it, and we've seen them using it in email attachments. We see that in URL paths and so on. So no, I don't know why they're doing this, but they seem to be in love with this lorem ipsum text. Okay, so let's look at the conclusion. What have I talked about before? So I talked about the actor. So TA577 is a really experienced and prolific cybercrime actor. We tie them to the Conti organization and also very closely to Quackbot. We think that they are likely the developers of Pikabot. They are likely also the operators, or at least very closely affiliated to the Blackbuster operation. We've seen a lot of changes in the malware landscape of what they used last year, like switching from only Quackbot to like a bunch of different malwares. And the infrastructure, we show that they have a mixture of owned and pwned infrastructure. So the owned infrastructure, basically the tier 2, which they don't expose that much, and the pwned infrastructure, basically these cPanel systems, which they use for the spamming and also for the web-based distribution. They love PHP scripts to do a lot of stuff, and that's also an excellent way to kind of track them. Our mission is to stop ransomware, and we think a crucial item of that is to stop it just at the beginning, to just stop the initial access. And so I'm not going to read all that recommendations because I think you are super familiar with that kind of stuff. But really, like, this is where we all should do more. And I want to conclude with this quote, which basically sums it up really good. It's from a book that I'm reading right now. Basically, we can try to fight them. We can even maybe take down the Quackbot botnet and maybe even arrest people, but they will not stop. And so we need to keep doing what we do. I love conferences like this where we exchange our findings to make it a little bit harder for the adversaries. And with that, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. Oh, lunch effect.
Everybody's hungry.
No question, no lunch. You have a question? Do you have a question for yourself?
A lot, but I can't answer them.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabian.
Everyone, I'm the person standing with the sample named first month. And they basically do it. We have Malware and also yesterday they're going, but otherwise continue incidents in 7.
We have time for one or two questions. Oh, lunch effect.
Everybody's hungry.
No question, no lunch. You have a question? Okay, we're back. And we're going right into the next presentation with Stefan and Danielle and co-writer Manuel Blatt. You have the floor. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stefan. This is Daniel. And this is joint work with Manuel. So I think many of you may know Daniel. He's been a regular at Botconf for... many of you may know Daniel. He's been a regular at Botconf for quite some time. It's my first time here, so hi. And you may already know him or me from some projects such as Malpedia. Okay, so today's topic is a taxonomic overview of prevalent malware communication strategies. So one thing I'd like to start with always is motivation. So why is Malware C2 that important? The thing is, we're at Botconf, so if you heard the same talks as me like the past 2 days, and even today, we should be on the same page that Malware C2 is quite important, and many people talked about it. Networking is even in the name. So let's don't waste too much time here and go to the more interesting motivational question. So why do we need a taxonomy? Or one could say a new or additional taxonomy. So one thing that I personally noticed like the past 2 days is many people were talking about Malware C2. I think like every second talk mentioned it in some way. But one thing that was missing from my researcher point of view is the taxonomy basically, because in order to more effectively talk about it, it really helps if you know which categories are interesting and you discuss each of those and not only just different aspects. And this is what effectively happened like the past 2 days. Let's say you're developing like a new tool or like countermeasures. It really helps if you can get this piece of information that you're interested in from all of those talks. And finally what we noticed is that if you want to get into malware traffic analysis, there are great sites like malwaretrafficanalysis.net, shout out to Brett. But what's missing here again is like a taxonomic overview, like a data set that you can use to get trained on all of those techniques. So let's say you're starting out, want to analyze technique A, then technique B. It really helps to know which malware family is using technique B and have easy access to like a live PCAP and in order to get into it. Oh, and finally, that's what the slide is hinting at. You're able to do some great statistics. So those are the families we looked at, and those are the families that Daniel's going to talk about like in 5 minutes or so. Okay, so a taxonomy for Malware C2 strategies. As I said, there are quite a few, not too many, but a few. The thing about them is that most of them are for botnets. I know we're at Botconf, but still not every malware is a botnet. So in order for them to be generally applicable, you don't want too many botnet specific stuff in there. So and basically none of them is generally applicable. MITRE ATT&CK has also been around, but although it contains many, if not even most of the aspects that we'd like to cover, it's not specific enough for Malware C2. So what's the most natural thing to do as a researcher? Create a new one. So that's what we did, created a new a new taxonomy, which looks like this. So we have 6 categories. We have a C2 models, we have rally mechanisms, we have the communication behavior, we have the carrier communication protocols, C2 protocols, and evasion techniques. So this whole thing is based on the Trend Micro report, but we made a few changes. So first of all, the communication behavior is added. Then we properly differentiated the carrier communication protocols and the C2 protocols. And then finally we removed like all botnet specific stuff. And removing this isn't a bad thing, because if you want to put it in there, you can cover it with the other categories as well. So let's get through each of those sections and see what you like to cover with it. Even closer? Okay. Okay. Yeah, so let's start with the C2 models. So basically C2 models are the high-level classification of the structure of the overlay network. So yeah, if you're thinking takedowns, if you're dealing with instances of infected machines, it's really helpful to know the high-level network structure. So for instance, if dealing with a peer-to-peer network, you may be dealing with bots and not servers. Yeah, so on the top right, you can see the categories we are differentiating, which are basically centralized, peer-to-peer, hybrid, and random. Yes, I know random, but because random is also included in other taxonomies, we decided to keep it and also include it. Then we have rally mechanisms, which is like the category we saw the most of the past days, I think. So for rally mechanisms, we are mostly interested in how the initial communication channel is established. And this can either be to hard-coded IPs, domains, also can be DGAs. Daniel told me there's at least one around still. And also things like indirections via web services, etc. And I think the main reason for also why we saw them like that much the past 2 days is because this is really interesting if you're thinking blocking, and that it may also like expose hints towards adversarial infrastructure. Then the communication behavior, as I said, was missing in the Trend Micro report. However, from our point of view, it's also very interesting as a characterization of how the communication is happening, and thus needs to be in the taxonomy. So for this, we mainly differentiate into categories. First of all, the transformation can be push or pull, and the sessions can be one or two-way, so uni or bidirectional. Yeah, and again, if you like want to communicate with instances of the botnet, it's really important to know how this communication behavior is implemented. So yeah, this is the third category. Next one is like the most interesting one in terms of the new taxonomy, I think, because previously the communication protocol wasn't like differentiated between carrier communication protocol and the actual protocol that is used to transmit data. So for this, the first category is like carrier communication protocols. We want to know which protocol is used to transmit the customized data, which then again can use a different protocol. And yeah, this can either be like some raw TCP UDP sockets, can be raw TLS. Oftentimes you're going to see some application layer protocols such as HTTP or HTTPS. And well, as you can see on the slide, and as we also heard yesterday, it can use some web services as carrier communication protocols such as Telegram. Yeah, and then the actual protocol, I call it actual protocol, the taxonomy calls it C2 protocol, is used to actually transmit the data. So this is oftentimes very, very specific, so we don't categorize it any further, but mostly you're going to see something like custom text format, custom binary format. Rarely it's going to be some existing format, some existing protocol, but yeah, and this is really important, and this is also something we saw the past few days, because the knowledge about how this protocol is working is really important to actually extract information and to have fun with communicating with, for instance, a botnet. So if you're thinking milker, crawler, so if you're trying stuff like this, it's really helpful and necessary to know how the protocol is working. Yeah, and then finally, I would say everything that has been covered in the previous 5 categories should fit into evasion techniques. So evasion techniques are heavily inspired by MITRE ATT&CK, and actually for many of them listed in the paper, which is also coming out on the website in a few weeks or so. So additionally to that, like the most evasion techniques that are covered are also like have a mapping to MITRE ATT&CK. So most of them are already covered in MITRE ATT&CK, so it can be something like backup C2 channels, proxies being used, encrypted data, obfuscated data, or even things like using a non-standard port for the carrier communication protocol. Okay, so that's basically the taxonomy. So to conclude it, we have those 6 categories with various aspects. As I said, there's going to be a paper, so please see the paper for details. And then more importantly, if you have any feedback, if you feel that anything is missing, please let us know, find us after the talk. Yeah, because the paper isn't finished yet and we are still able, or we will be able to integrate some feedback. Okay, so now I give over to Daniel to talk about the application of the taxonomy and the case study we did.
Thank you very much. Yes, so since we now have established basically something like a language that we can use to categorize different traffic protocols, I really want to start with a little example to show how this can be used. For this I want to use a sandbox run, in this case from Triage. This is basically also what we did with all of the data that's later to be presented. This is basically the workflow we did for reviewing. And as you might be familiar with, Triage is capable for config extraction for a lot of different malware families. In this case, we are now looking at, for example, Aurora Stealer. What we immediately can see is that there's one hard-coded IP address with a port. If we inspect the network tab for the sandbox run, we can also see that there's bidirectional traffic, so we actually receive something back from a C2 server, which is good news, because it would be something that we can use to study this case. Looking deeper at the PCAP, one thing that we might notice here is that the communication is initiated by the server. So we are first receiving something before the bot is basically talking back. The commands that are coming from the C2 servers are just plain text. On the way back, we see that's apparently base 64. There's a really good blog post by Mohamed Adel about how to decrypt this traffic, for example, and we can see that's basically JSON ultimately, which is wrapped, first zipped and then wrapped in base 64. So applying our taxonomy, you would end up with something like, we have a centralized model because we talk to a determined server. For rallying, we know one hard-coded IP address. Communication behavior is two-way because we have communication back and forth, and push in a way because the C2 server initiates the communication. Carrier protocol is just TCP, so no HTTP or anything involved. And for the internal protocol, like I just said, we have different takes on server and bot communication. Evasion techniques is in some terms probably a bit specific to what you're looking at. Data obfuscation, in this case for the bot communication, could also be just data transformation, which you will likely see for many of the different cases that we're discussing. Now, what we wanted to do with our evaluation was basically to verify that this taxonomy is applicable to many different families, and while doing that, at the same time, provide an overview of how does malware C2 communication look right now. This means basically looking at a wide array of different families and trying to categorize their behaviors. In order to identify the currently prevalent malware families, we decided to look at Malware Bazaar. Shout out to Roman and VCH for this great project. And we specifically looked at the last 1.5 years, going back from February this year. What we then did is identify the most submitted families and then try to find a live sandbox run for each of those families so we could get an idea about that. A student in our department also wrote a PCAP filtering tool, which was then applied to all of the sandbox runs in order to really narrow down on the actual C2 communication. And the idea is that this data set that has been produced will be published alongside with the paper when it's finally done and everything is integrated. Just to give you an overview, the top 20 families, overall we have seen roughly 200,000 submissions to Malware Bazaar in this time window we were looking at, with roughly 85% of families being identified. And the most popular in this time frame were, for example, Redline, but with Mirai we see already another family that's not for Windows, for example. So we also didn't want to discriminate by platform and included at least two ELF or Linux-based malware families in that case. Yeah, for many of the other ones, you can see that there are a lot of loaders, stealers, and so on that you are probably very well familiar with. The top 20 cover already 76% of the submissions to Malware Bazaar, and all of families considered that we looked at basically add up to 81% something. So there's really a heavy tail for the remaining signatures, but many of them having only few submissions. Yes, so as already was shown by Steffen before, this is basically the collection of malware families we were looking at. And in order to find live sandbox runs for them, I think we had a look at more than 22,200. Yeah, 2,200 sandbox runs in order to find one for most of those families. So for many of them, it was pretty easy. For some, it was so hard that I think I looked at 400 or 500 form book runs, and I was still not able to find one with responsive servers. So it was quite a bit of effort. Same for Loki. And then you also have the issue that sometimes, or in many times with the loaders, you will have impure sandbox runs where obviously the follow-up payload is also found in the PCAP. But the loader is initiating communication first, so can still differ between the two. Okay, with that out of the way, let's have a look at the statistics basically. Now we can also basically confirm or correct your own biases, because all of you probably have an idea about how C2 with many families might look like, or if the assumptions that you might carry around hold up, at least with the cases that we looked at. One important thing is, all the data that's now shown basically is only for the one observed run. So we did not basically interpolate across multiple runs for those families or basically correlated it with write-ups. Although in the paper we will be listing 1 to 3 reference blog posts, analysis reports, and so on that basically go on the details for the respective C2 protocol used by the family being discussed. Yes, with the first dimension, looking at the C2 model, what we can see is basically that all of them are nowadays, or at least the ones that we considered, are using a centralized model, with some of them likely also using hierarchical models, as has been reported. So especially also for the one this morning, we've seen that they probably have a tiered infrastructure. If you only look at the PCAP, you're mostly not able to see that, so we can just assume centralized in this case. For rallying, basically the majority is actually using hard-coded IP addresses, and in combination with hard-coded domains, this adds up to a good 88% already. So almost all the families are basically using hardcore domains and IP addresses. 4 of them are using SMTP for exfiltration, so we basically would have a mail server with some credentials that were being used to then mail out stolen data, because all of the families listed here, for example, are stealers in this case. 2 more interesting ones were, for example, DCRed and VIDA, who have the capability to do indirection. They will, for example, first go to a benign service in order to retrieve their real C2 address. In the case of DCRed, they would possibly, for example, go to pastebin, try to download a little text document where the actual C2 information is contained in. And some of you who have been probably a long time at Botconf might know that I gave many years ago a talk about DGAs. I'm very happy that Bumblebee adopted basically a DGA in 23, so it's still not dead. But otherwise, we can see that DGAs are rarely used, at least in the families that we are dealing with right now. For communication behavior, there's also not that many surprises. Most of them are doing two-way pull. I guess if you are assuming that many of them are using HTTP as a carrier protocol, that means they will always check in with their server and then possibly get a response returned, especially meaning that they have some communication behavior. That means periodic check-ins. On the other hand, if you have a push model, that means the C2 server can control the speed at which exchanges are happening. This is way less commonly found, would probably something that you would find if you would focus more on REDs or real synchronized communication REDs. For those 2 loaders that are basically using benign services, we considered them one-way pull because they have no way to interact with a real C2, but are really just tailored to download stuff. And SMTP, once again, just means you're pushing out data without any opportunity to receive anything back. For carrier protocols, we had a deep look at how they are basically hosted. So if you look at reporting, I guess the statistics for how many HTTP communications or generally traffic in the internet being encrypted was something beyond 80% for most of the normal web traffic and so on. I was delighted that this was a little bit less in this case. So we had around 60% of families that are not using TLS encrypted carrier communication, which means that you at least have a chance to look at how they are communicating, which in many cases obviously is still encrypted, but you at least have access in case of semantic protocols to get a visibility opportunity there. Yes, so altogether we see that some of them obviously also going to Cloudflare or other traffic distribution systems for basically more stability or reliability. And once again, our 4 friends using SMTP there. Moving forward, so how are actually the C2 protocols looking like? Naturally, if we have a TLS encrypted channel, we had no chance to observe this. And as I said, we are basically only focusing on what we can observe here. But we see that around 10 of them, which translates to roughly 20%, are using text-based protocols. So in some way, probably divided by delimiters. JSON would also be considered a text-based protocol in that sense, versus binary protocols where you have a fixed format that probably defines fields and has to be passed in another way. For 17 of those families, without doing reversing or consulting other information, you would also have to basically assume that they are an unknown protocol, because you cannot look beyond whatever custom or own-rolled or probably in many cases RC4 encryption they are using for encrypting their traffic. Yes. So altogether, this gives already a good idea and overview about how the C2 landscape looks like that we are basically currently dealing with. For the evasion techniques, since this is a bit more multidimensional, so we would have to list many characteristics as a superset essentially for each of the families. We decided to leave it out of scope for this presentation, also for time reasons, and are basically just referring to the paper, which will discuss this in a bit more detail. Yes. So I think what we did here was basically an overview, and if you have other opinions or observed other details for some of these families, we are very happy to hear about that. Also, if you feel that we left out your new favorite family, we would also consider to give it a try and try to find more data for them in order to extend it to even be more representative as a data set. But ultimately, the idea that we wanted to achieve with this, and this is also basically where I want to come to the conclusion, is that this should basically serve as a starting point if you want to dive a bit more into traffic analysis. So a colleague of ours, for example, had the idea every now and then people want to do automatic protocol recovery, and getting a starting point for that is really hard because, like I said, even identifying a wide range of live runs wasn't that easy to be found just on one platform, be it for geofencing that is just then applied because they are identified and whatnot. But we tried as good as possible. And for the families where we were not capable to find them and you have that one run, please send a link to me. Yes, so in summary, we presented a taxonomy that can be used to have a structured look at how C2 communication looks like, and we then applied it to a data set that we created to give an overview of how a C2 looks like, at least in families used or predominantly used with respect to Malware Bazaar in the last 1.5 years. Yes, and as I said, paper and data set are coming. With that, thank you very much for your attention, and if you have questions, please do.
Thank you. So we're going to take a couple questions, just to keep looking at the time. So if you take pictures, you got to ask questions. He doesn't have a good question.
Excellent presentation, thank you. When you encounter some families that have multiple options for C2 communication, for example, DNS or HTTPS, do you just categorize as two separate entities to put in the taxonomy?
Yes, if you would use it as a completely formal model, you could basically say that you have two tuples that define a setting, which would also be applied in more traditional families that had like backup channels with DGA, or they would have another fallback, then it would be just to do multiple tuples defining the communication, I guess. They can then naturally overlap in their actual internal C2 protocol, but it at least allows to distinguish between those, yeah.
You've not done very much with the ones that say encrypted, but in fact you could probably do a taxonomy based on the encryption routines that are used, which encryption algorithm is used, for instance. So, you know, we would know this one does RC4 and that one does AES, and And sometimes it's quite simple. Sometimes it's a simple XOR, but it's, yeah, we could fill in a lot of gaps in that grid of yours. I should think if all the people in this room put their heads together.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, for those that are generating good entropy and streams, it's quite harder because then, as I said, basically we only looked at PCAPs this time. So it was no reversing, not looking up reports, and otherwise I would have been able to fill in the gaps. What we will do for the paper at least is that we provide this information in brackets so that you get a better idea of what might be actually used for that. But again, that's too detailed to present it here as well, because then I have to talk about that family, that family, that family, that family, and I didn't want to do that.
Okay. Last question.
Thank you for the great presentation. First, to continue on the last question, as a malware analyst, I would also be interested in adding a category for encryption specifically, so different types of encryption. For example, is it asymmetric, is it custom? That's often very interesting when analyzing the traffic to me, so would something like that be possible? And then are you also looking at creating similar taxonomies for other parts of malware, for example, host-based artifacts?
That's a whole different topic, I guess. I don't know if we consider that as future research. I can just give you an insight of what we have planned for Mapedia, for example. What we wanted to do there is, for example, that we start categorizing families by their capabilities or something. So it's not really helping with host-based artifacts, but it will allow tagging, and for tagging you typically need a taxonomy as well. So it might be an opportunity to do that in that when we will look at these things. We'll see. Yeah, for encryption, as I said again, I guess if you have an informed way to fill in this data, which you typically have if you do a deep dive and do more analysis, then you can annotate that way, and we can try to consider that for the taxonomy as well. Thank you very much for the feedback.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.